in this video, I'm going to show you another option for transferring your design or artwork onto your panel, but this time we're going to use masking to actually transfer the design. This is a relatively simple technique. You'll need a few things, starting with some tape. This is drafting tape. I prefer to use drafting tape anytime I'm taping on just a regular piece of paper that I want to keep. If I'm not planning on keeping it, it doesn't matter what tape I use. I prefer drafting tape simply because it's really easy to remove without damaging the paper. But it doesn't matter what kind of tape you use. Any tape will work for this purpose. You will need some transfer tape. It doesn't matter whether you use transparent transfer tape or the semi-opaque transfer tape. I am going to be using some semi-opaque transfer tape for this video. You will need a light box or a window on a bright sunny day. I'm going to use a light box. The light box that I use is extremely old. I'm pretty sure you probably can't get it anymore. I know you can't buy the bulbs anymore. They quit making those. But I'm using a very old light box. I can't give you any recommendations on the newer LED light boxes because I've never used them. But again, if you don't have a light box, if you don't want to purchase a light box, you can use a window for the same purpose. You'll also need a clear piece of plastic or Lexan, Duralar, acetate, plexiglass, a piece of glass. You just need something clear that you can stick your transfer tape to that will allow you to remove the transfer tape relatively easily and reapply it onto your panel. This is actually just a piece of a lamination sheet that I laminated without putting anything into the sleeve. These work great. For this demonstration, I actually just laminated a photocopy of my artwork. It's just easier that way, and I will probably reproduce this many times over the years, so this way I have a good copy that's laminated, protected, to keep it. If I were going to do this on just this sheet of paper, what I would do is take my design, the sheet of paper, and tape it to my light box, just like it's taped to the backboard of my easel here. When that's done, I would take my clear plastic, acetate, Duralar, whatever you're using, and tape that directly over my piece of paper with the artwork. So the first step in the process is to tape down my design onto the light box, and again, you can use a window as well. Now again, I'm using a laminated copy of my artwork, so it's safe for me to actually apply transfer tape directly to that lamination, and I won't have any issues removing it later so that I can reapply it to the panel. If you are using just a paper sketch or paper artwork, you don't want to put transfer tape directly over the paper. You can, and it can be removed, but it's a lot easier if you use a barrier between your artwork and the transfer tape. That's again where the plastic comes in. You want to tape that directly over your artwork. So once you've got your artwork taped to the light box or the window, whatever you're using, we can remove a sheet of the transfer tape. Once we've got a sheet of the transfer tape, we just apply it to, again, the laminate or the acetate, the Duralar, the clear plastic, whatever you're using. And I like to use a squeegee just to kind of work out the air bubbles. Once we have our transfer tape applied, we can go ahead and start tracing out our design. If you are using one of the semi-opaque transfer tapes, those are pretty much like paper. You can mark on those with just about anything you want. Here I'm just using a regular pencil. If you are using one of the transparent transfer tapes, those are not like paper. Those are more of a plastic. You can't necessarily draw on those and get good results with a regular pencil. You can use a ballpoint ink pen. I think the best tool for the job, in my opinion, is a Sharpie. One word of caution when using a Sharpie on your transparent transfer tape. If you are using a urethane-based paint system, the urethane can actually re-wet the ink from the Sharpie and it can run down into your artwork, so be aware of that. So we have our design. At this point, the transfer tape is still attached to the laminated copy of my artwork. You want to be very careful when you're removing the transfer tape from whatever barrier you are using. This stuff will absolutely stick to itself if you allow the sticky side to catch anywhere on the sticky side. So I'm going to remove it. And when I get to the end, I'm going to slow way down and stop. I'm going to hold it up. And I'm going to take the bottom loose this way. That way I can hang on to the actual transfer tape and keep it from rolling on itself and sticking to itself, hopefully. See how that corner's trying to roll up? That's what I don't want to happen. There we go. Now all I have to do is apply it to my actual panel. So pull this out, try to get it lined up relatively straight and centered. And I'll lightly put it down and make sure I'm happy with the placement before I really start pushing the air pockets out and applying it to the panel. This way I can make sure that it's lined up the way I want it. If it's not, at this point it's relatively easy to pull it back off and reapply it. It's not near as easy if you go ahead and burnish it down before you're sure that you're happy with your placement. I think that looks pretty good. I'm just lifting it now so I can begin burnishing it down and trying to get as few air pockets as I possibly can. A few air pockets, minor creases are not going to make this a huge deal. You can see, hopefully the camera will pick this up. I've got a wrinkle right there and some wrinkles right there. Those are not detrimental to the project. I do like to take a squeegee and make sure I burnish this down well. That's pretty good. I don't know if the camera's going to pick this up or not, but there's an air pocket there, there's an air pocket there, one there. You get a lot more air pockets with transfer tape compared to vinyl. Again, it's not detrimental. The next step is to grab an X-Acto knife. I strongly recommend that you use a brand new blade with your X-Acto knife. If you are not used to cutting through transfer tape on the actual panel that you're going to be painting, I also highly recommend that you practice this. Practice it. You can practice it on your plastic sheet, whatever you used as a barrier. The idea is you want to use just enough pressure to cut through the actual transfer tape without cutting into the surface that you will be painting. If you allow too much pressure, or if you use too much pressure, you take the chance of scoring the actual surface that you're painting. If you score it enough, if you go deep enough, you will not be able to cover that up with your paint. You will see it in the end. You can also have delamination issues, especially if you're working in the automotive realm. So it's a good idea to practice this. If you use a brand new blade, it takes less pressure. If you're using an old dull blade, you will find yourself pushing harder trying to get a cut all the way through the transfer tape, and the risk of actually scoring the surface underneath is a lot higher with the dull blade. So use a new blade, take your time. It takes very little pressure to cut through this. But I'm going to go through and cut out essentially the outside of the skull. I'll cut out the eye sockets and the nose sockets and probably the teeth, and that's all I'm going to need for this. Maybe the gaping holes in the crack. Again, it takes very little pressure to cut through this. I prefer to use one continuous stroke all the way around. It's a lot easier to do this down on a table or a bench versus on the easel. That way you don't have overlapping cuts any more than you absolutely need. When you start and stop in different areas, you will almost always find spots where you didn't get the cuts to actually meet when you're trying to remove the mask. also a very good idea to keep track of where you've cut so that you don't cut in the same place more than once, because again, then you run the risk of actually going through and scoring the surface underneath. We're all a little bit different. We all have our own methods for doing that. Another quick little tip. If you come to an area where you think you've previously cut but you're not sure, if you very gently lay your knife into the groove where you believe the cut is, you can actually feel the cut line before you start cutting. At this point, I think I've got everything cut that I need to cut. I can go ahead and start removing the areas that I want to paint first. Probably what I would do on this, since I'm working on a black background, or a white background, I would want to paint the very darkest area first. That way I have a good judge of where my contrast should be for the lights and darks. So I would remove the areas that are going to be completely black. One more quick little tip. It's a very good idea to save everything that you cut out. To do that, I'm going to put this laminated artwork up here. And I can remove and I would like to keep this, and I can reattach it to this piece of laminated plastic I have on here, so that if I want to cover that eye socket again later, I now have that piece rather than having to lay another piece of transfer tape over it and cut on the surface again. It's a very good idea to always keep anything you cut out and remove, keep it just in case until you're finished. Because I don't know how many times in the past, I have not always done this, and I still don't always do this, but I don't know how many times in the past I've been working on something and I've removed a portion of a mask only later to figure out that, hey, it sure would be handy if I had that again, and I didn't keep it. So it's always a good idea to keep those portions that you cut out just in case. One last quick tip concerning the sections of the mask that we removed and we are saving. Sometimes you will have little sections of a mask that you've removed that are very similar in shape and very similar in size, and it can be extremely difficult to figure out which one went to one particular section on your actual panel. I've been there before. It's frustrating. It's a good idea when you're removing those sections and saving them to orient them in the same way that they actually came off the panel. That relieves some of that confusion. And with that, this panel is ready for some color. I hope you guys have got something out of this. If you did, remember to like, subscribe, and share. I will leave links in the description below to all the products that I used and recommend for this video. My name's Trevor with Wicked Art Studio. I'll see you guys next time.